The other day I had a unique experience. I was out performing a boundary survey and I had a very critical angle point, and I found a monument set by Roger Frank, LS 4215, in 1975. This monument was down 2 feet in dirt and then another 6 inches in asphalt. It was absolutely critical to the work that I was doing. Additionally, I had another angle point on the same survey that was the angle point that was common to 3 different tracks. And this monument was set in 1968, and it was critical to my survey. Without these monuments, I would have had to survey for several additional days to reestablish these lines. It was important. These were durable monuments, having been in the ground for nearly 50 years. Welcome to the 10-Minute Land Surveyor. Today's program is Durable Monuments, and I'm your host, David Woolley. As discussed in Program 1, the importance of monuments to the California land surveyor cannot be understated. Monuments are paramount in determining the location of boundaries. Today we're talking about durable monuments. Screen here you see bearing trees that we set last summer. These bearing trees, ideally, absence of fire, should last well over 100 years, as are most bearing trees that I've found. In the foreground of the center photo, you'll see a quarter section corner that was scribed, and it's well over 120 years old. These arguably are durable monuments. Now, in learning how to scribe these trees, of course, we had to use a timber scribe, and this is a photo of the trees in our parking lot as we learned to practice to scribe. Of course, we don't use a timber scribe anymore. However, initially we did. This is a quarter section stone found on the Cleveland forest that was about 120 years old, scribed as the original notes say. And the balance of these are pipe. I would say that pipe are the most durable monument that we find, stone also. So in looking at a mag nail and a washer set in a rough aggregate as shown in the photo, what we found is that these monuments generally only last 2 to 3 years maximum. In this particular photo, what we see is we see a mag nail and washer, typically a 2.5 inch, 3 inch mag nail washer set in aggregate. Based on my experience, this type of monument, if it's not in an area of travel, such as a center line of a road, they last 2 to 3 years. This particular one did last 2 to 3 years. Today you could walk over and you could pull it out. It was set in a parking area that had minor traffic. If you were to recess this monument and use an epoxy, this monument would last a decade or more. So the same monument, it just depends on the care taken when you set. The epoxy that we use is a 2-stage epoxy. This happens to be JB Weld, which really works well. We've set brass disc with this particular epoxy, and when we had to move those discs due to an error, we actually broke the top of the disc off from the stem using a crowbar. This epoxy is incredible. When we're talking about durable monuments, we've found any number of monuments in the course of our career. I'll back up a little bit and tell you what my frame of reference is. I've filed in the nature of around 250 to 300 records of survey, and we've set probably about 800 monuments last year in the course of monument preservation. So we have a sense of what works and what doesn't, and what we find and how old it is. In this particular case, you can see the relationship of a railroad spike relative to a mag nail, relative to a gear spike, relative to mag nails. And on the end there you see a concrete nail. Concrete nails do not last long because they rust. And even if they're galvanized, they don't last very long. Across the top, what you see is a steel washer. There was a period of time then when we ordered pre-stamped washers, and the stamping was so faint that we didn't feel it was sufficient and certainly not durable. And so what we started doing is stamping our own washers, and we use metal washers for that. And you see a control washer and a brass washer common to our industry. Various types of spikes are shown in this particular photo. You have left to right, you have a railroad spike, a boat spike, a gear spike or gin spike, what's actually a Dura-nail and a mag spike. We like the Dura-nails because they have a scribed cross in the top, but we quit using them because we found out that they rust, that coating actually cracks, and anything that rusts has a very short shelf life, with the exception, of course, of pipes. Brass disc are something that we found to be very, very durable. We've found brass disc well over 100 years old. Now, brass disc, just to give you a sense of the cost, I went ahead and priced these out. The biggest disc, 2 3/4, shown here is a $50 disc, and you can see the prices here as they vary. You're about $16 for a disc. Now, the one thing that we really have, something we've experienced that we find is awesome as far as durable, is these particular spikes here, or I'm sorry, disc here. They have magnets on the bottom, because one of the downsides to a brass disc that's set without it being in an iron pipe, floated in concrete, is they're not magnetized. So what does that look like? It's only $1 difference to get a magnetized disc. So this is a magnetized disc, and when you order the disc, they actually epoxy the magnet onto the bottom. We do order and have ordered these magnets separate. If we find a pipe that's particularly deep or something like that, we'll put a magnet in it when we reset a tag in it. So they're much louder than a pipe. So if you're going to order the brass disc, always order them with magnets. And I'll talk later about how we set these. Few things are more durable than an iron pipe. As I mentioned the other day, I found an iron pipe set in 1968, and I've found many iron pipe that are much older than that. Usually the pipe is durable, but the tag isn't always with the pipe. So a couple things we do is you should set your tags in concrete. And the actual process is you compact dirt in to the monument, and you leave about this much room, 2-3 inches, and you put concrete in. Now this particular concrete quick set works really well. Now one of the tricks is when you set the brass nail, and you shouldn't set a regular nail because it again will rust, but when you set the brass nail, if you bend it close to 90, that concrete when it sets contracts. If it's 90, you won't be able to just pull that tag up out of there. So always bend your nail when you set it in concrete. Now this is the monument that we have found to be the most durable. In one of our, we've set, like I said, nearly 800 of these just last year. And what these are is brass disc with magnets on the bottom. And so we pull them in, and underneath, in this particular jurisdiction, they actually set pipe underneath. And so these pipe are only about 3/10 of a foot underneath the surface, sometimes a little more. And so it's not practical to set a spike. We're not going to cut a spike off, or we're certainly not going to set a mag nail that will be gone in 2 to 3 years minimum. So what we do is we set these particular brass discs with magnets in the surface. So what does it cost to do that? Well, to set these brass discs costs about $20 a monument. And what you have here is we have a heavy duty drill that costs anywhere from $250 to $300. Looking at the slide shown here, we break down the actual cost associated with setting a brass disc is about $20 per monument. If you see here a heavy duty drill with an SDS bit, they cost about $250, and they go up from there. But a $250 drill will get the job done. Next, we have a specialized drill bit. These drill bits range anywhere from $150 to $350. I'm going to talk a little bit more about these. The $150 drill bit is good for about 150 holes. $350 drill bit's good for about 350 holes. So it's about $1 a hole on your drill bit. The JB weld that we use to epoxy these in is about, you get $1 or about $3 per. You get 5 monuments for $15. And the brass disc, as we mentioned earlier, $16.07. So the cost per monument is about $20 per monument. So how do you balance that? Well, you balance that with the cost of labor. And depending on logistics, how many monuments you're going to set, depending on how far you travel, the cost of setting a monument varies greatly. However, the more monuments you set, the lower the cost. If you have to drive for an hour, it may take you $700 to set one monument. However, if you have 300 to set, that cost can come down maybe around $300, not 200, but $300 per monument. So when you take the cost of the monument being $20 and you factor it into a crew rate of about $300 per crew, you're really talking about a very little amount when you look at the cost of a $20 monument. But more importantly, if all surveyors practice in a similar manner, the monuments will last longer, and the cost to do a survey, the next survey will be considerably less as we have the evidence available. In my opening, I mentioned finding 2 monuments that saved me days having recovered them. This will play itself forward in a very similar manner. Give you a sense of the concrete that you're using. Concrete costs about $13 for a big pail of this stuff. So it's again, it's a nothing cost. And so if you're setting monuments, look to use concrete when you can. If you're going to fix a monument in concrete, most of the urban monuments that I find that are the oldest are set in concrete. So what is it costed by the drill? As I mentioned earlier, this is an SDS drill in the background. It costs about $250 up. The cost of the bits on the bottom one, that's a $150 bit, and the importance is that they have the collar on them to recess the monuments. Each one of these collars is for a different size of monument to recess it. It's absolutely important and paramount to the preservation of the monuments that they're recessed and epoxied. Now when you look at the bit shown here, this particular bit, the bit actually changes out, same as the one above it. So what happens is as these bits, they're good for about 300, 350 monuments, you swap out the bit, but the recess, the collar, doesn't wear out. These particular bits are bought in 3-piece sets. And so those bits last a long time, particularly collar. The other ones last about 300. I highly recommend, though, if you're drilling out curb, to use the O tags, which are on the bottom. It'll save you a tremendous amount of time. It makes a nice monument, and that monument's recessed. Being recessed is absolutely key to preservation and to longevity. This is actually an O-Tag website. It's shown there. It's info@o-tags.com, and I highly recommend using them. I know their orders are currently out of stock, but when they get back in, you cannot have enough of these bits. Now, it's also designed by a surveyor from Orange County. Durable monuments are the land surveyor's responsibility. So I'm asking you to pack away your clown shoes, put away the mini bikes, and help us raise the standard of care in California. Thank you, and have a nice day.